As far as his arm goes, Jalen Hurts had a very high average depth of target, so I don't think his ability to throw for distance is a problem, especially on first and third downs. He threw deep a lot. So I don't think throwing deep is a problem. He was better against zone than against man, so that's sort of interesting. Although, the Eagles were not exactly running receivers out there who can beat man coverage. So I don't know how much that has to do with Hurts versus, Travis Fulgham and Greg Ward. The Eagles also look like a little bit of a, wreck. They're in a transition period. Obviously, they're depending on Jalen Hurts taking a huge step forward. So I think it's really going to be Dallas and Washington competing for the division title.
Mac and Mac guys on a Monday get-together here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Yes, we talk Eagles, but we look at the entire National Football League because that's where the Philadelphia Eagles reside. Here to help us take a look at the entire league is the guy who comes in and day out for Football Outsiders. Aaron Schatz joins us here on Birds 365. How you doing, Aaron?
Hey, I'm good, guys. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. Good to have you, Aaron. And obviously, Aaron is here because the Football Outsiders Almanac has hit the presses. It is out. Everybody should get it. He's showing to. Look at the size of that thing, Jody. Show that off to the side, Aaron. Look at that thing.
525 pages of NFL and college previews right here.
525 pages. So it is my favorite NFL preseason annual. I want to start out little football DVOA for dummies, Aaron, because you're the creator of that particular stat. Kind of explain that to casual fans who don't understand it.
Sure. DVOA stands for Defense Adjusted Value Over Average. What we do is we look at the success on every play compared to a league average baseline. That's based on the down and distance, right? Getting 5 yards on 1st and 10 is good. Getting 5 yards on 3rd and 10 is not as good. We compare things to a league average baseline. We adjust it for situation and opponent. Better than 0 is good for offense. Lower than 0 is good for defense.
I love that almanac. That could actually kill a New York City cockroach. I've tried with newspapers. They don't work. You need an actual big book like that one to be able to do the duty. All right, as you're compiling this during the off season, you're on top of this. You do it every single year. You're crunching the stats every single day. Something had to jump out at you. One of the things that you did not know or hadn't realized, and when you were putting it together, you go, damn, didn't know that. What was that thing this year?
Well, I think the biggest thing from last year is the number of injuries when you count all the COVID and the COVID opt-outs that teams like Philly, New England, San Francisco had record numbers of injuries. Also, a lot of stuff with Baltimore really jumped out. The fact that Lamar Jackson, the trouble that he has throwing to outside receivers is not just a myth, like it's really backed up by the numbers. And then some of the numbers that change wildly from year to year in the NFL. Baltimore was the best team in the league from empty backfields in 2019 and the worst team in the league from empty backfields in 2020. Like, it goes to show how quickly things change.
We were all learning last year, Aaron, and obviously nobody predicted the pandemic, its effect. Everything was fly by the seat of its pants. What did you learn about evaluating from last year's edition, say, to this year? Because we're back in it. We're talking about 85% vaccination rate. Some teams are under 50%. We're going to see how the NFL handles it. Nobody really knows how they're going to handle this moving forward. As I said, everything is kind of fluid. How does that affect evaluation, or is it too difficult to get caught up in that? I guess is what I'm asking.
I think it's too difficult to get caught up in that. It's hard because there's never been an off season like last year's off season. So you couldn't really adjust for it. Yeah. And there's never been an off season like this year's off season. We don't know, for example, what the effect will be of all of the second-year players finally having their first real off seasons, right? Those players didn't have a real off season in their first year. We don't know how many players will miss time during the season because of COVID. We still don't know, for example, last year, there's some thought that part of the problem that Cam Newton had for the New England Patriots was that he had COVID in week 4 because he played very well in the first 3 games of the season, came back from having COVID and was terrible, couldn't hit any of his receivers. So there's questions going into this year about, well, is that because of Cam Newton's shoulder or is that because of COVID? Like, there's so many questions and we just can't answer them until we see what the results are on the field.
Aaron, love what you said about not if you're a Ravens fan listening to us on Birds 365. Sorry about Lamar Jackson and the conclusions that Aaron drew from his number crunching and his analytics look at the ability of the quarterback to throw it outside. I want you to apply those to the previous Eagle quarterback and the new Eagle quarterback. First of all, Carson Wentz, who was an MVP candidate in 2017 and became a stiff and the lowest ranked quarterback in the National Football League last year before the Eagles sent him out to Indianapolis. Tell us what the number crunching said about Carson Wentz and why the precipitous drop off. And then I want to ask you basically the same question about Jalen Hurts and the small sample size we got of him last year and his abilities off what your number evaluation of him is. Carson first, if you please.
Yeah, sure. About Carson Wentz, I think what you need to understand is we don't know why he declined, but what we do know is where he declined from. And the fact is that the MVP year was a bit of a mirage. It was caused by unsustainable success on 3rd downs and in the red zone. And the fact is that the success that you have on 1st and 2nd downs over most of the field is more sustainable than those smaller sample size, but more important situations like red zone and 3rd down. So what we already knew about Carson Wentz from 2018 and 2019 was he wasn't one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He was an average quarterback. That being said, there's never really been a quarterback who declined from average to abominable to quite the extent that Carson Wentz did last year. And there really is, it's really hard to know what caused, I think it's more of a scouting question than a stats question.
Okay.
What's in his head? What happened with his mechanics? Certainly the offensive line injuries did play a part. We have a stat called offensive line continuity score. And the Eagles had the lowest offensive line continuity score we had ever measured. They didn't use the same 5 linemen for 3 games in a row at any point. Yeah. So it's hard to know why Wentz collapsed so much, but what's important is to know where he collapsed from. He wasn't an MVP level quarterback before his collapse. He was an average quarterback before his collapse.
Fair enough. Jalen Hurts, number crunching, tell you about him. I know some people compare him to the quarterback of the Ravens. I actually like his arm better. I'm a bigger fan of his arm than some people are. Some people question whether he has a true starting quarterback's NFL arm. I think his arm strength is good enough. I'm going to question his decision-making, and is he just going to be a guy who, as soon as he gets pressured, he takes off and run? I'll ask you to crunch your numbers on Jalen Hurts. What did you see? What did you learn of the small 4-game sample we got last year?
As far as his arm goes, Jalen Hurts had a very high average depth of target, so I don't think his ability to throw for distance is a problem, especially on 1st and 3rd downs. He threw deep a lot. So I don't think throwing deep is a problem. He was better against zone than against man, so that's sort of interesting. Although, the Eagles were not exactly running receivers out there who can beat man coverage. So I don't know how much that has to do with Hurts versus, Travis Fulgham and Greg Ward. He was about average against pressure, but he was below average without pressure, which is not a good thing going forward because it's your performance without pressure that tends to stay consistent, while your performance under pressure is very variable.
Go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was just going to say the other thing is that his performance as a runner should improve because, like in our numbers, we ding him for fumbled snaps, but that's not really – those count as runs, but they're not really runs. If, they fumble fewer snaps in 2021, his, running will improve.
I think when I talk to most personnel people, the first thing they bring up when they question Jalen is the accuracy. And the number 52% stands out, but you put more context to that, obviously. In the NFL these days, 65% might be average for a good quarterback. So that is a really, really bad number. From your experience, can guys improve? I think you looked at Josh Allen in Buffalo, who was knocked as an inaccurate guy, and all of a sudden he becomes accurate enough. So how rare is it for someone to really spike in the accuracy kind of category?
Very rare. I mean, some improvement is expected. And certainly for second-year quarterbacks, most of them play badly their first year and improve in their second year. And I would expect the same from Jalen Hurts. We are going to be using Josh Allen as an example of how a quarterback can improve in accuracy from now until the end of time. But I don't know how duplicatable it is. If it turns out that whatever he did with studying his mechanics on film and with computers and adjusting his mechanics to improve his accuracy, if that could be duplicated with other quarterbacks, it really changes how you scout quarterbacks, because it allows you to bring in more guys who maybe have stronger arms or are more mobile and who aren't as good at accuracy, and hope that you could improve them in the NFL. Until I see it happening regularly with quarterbacks who aren't named Josh Allen, I'm going to expect that it is about as rare as it has been in history. It's very rare for a quarterback to improve his accuracy the way Josh Allen did last year.
Aaron, let me take you here. Again, we are in the season of looking into crystal balls and lists and getting ready for an upcoming year. And soon enough, camps are going to open up and we get to actually watch football again. But everybody likes to analyze and speculate. I've seen more predictions of the same two teams in the Super Bowl this year than I have in the last 5 years, 10 years, maybe even 15 years, going back to the last time it happened with the Bills and the Cowboys in the 90s. I get it. I understand. Patrick Mahomes is on one side, and that Brady guy who just lives in the Super Bowl is the other. Is it just the quarterbacks? Is that why I see more people saying, yeah, we're going to see the Colts and the Bucs again than we usually do, because we know how difficult it is to get back to the Super Bowl 2 years running. Is it tied solely to the quarterbacks? And do you think that it's accurate this year that, yeah, it could very well be Kansas City and Tampa in the Super Bowl?
It's heavily tied to the quarterbacks. The fact is, quarterback is the most important position in the game. And in some ways, the game revolves around the quarterback, and you need to have a top quarterback to have the best chance of making it to the Super Bowl. In Tampa's case, it's not just about the quarterback. First of all, in Kansas City, Mahomes has guys like Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. So it's not just about the quarterback, but it's heavily about the quarterback because their defense is average, maybe even worse than average. In Tampa Bay, it's much more about the whole team around Brady. He's got great receivers. He's got a really good offensive line. He's got a really good defense. The problem Tampa Bay has is a lack of depth, which was not an issue last year when they were the healthiest team in the league. So you can predict them to make it back, but if they have a above average level of injuries, they're going to fall off more than other teams because at most positions, they don't have depth. There's a couple positions that are exceptions like tight end, but for the most part, Tampa Bay is not a very deep team, but we do have them as the best team for this year projected, and we have them with a very easy schedule. So when you combine those two things, we have them as the best chance of any team to go to the Super Bowl again.
Aaron, I want to focus you on the NFC East because we're talking Philadelphia Eagles here every day, but the division as a whole, obviously it's been a downtime for the NFC East. Looks like teams are starting to head in a better direction, certainly in Washington, in the New York Giants. Dallas is getting Dak Prescott back. Just your thoughts on the division as a whole.
Well, we're really big Dak Prescott believers. He's one of the top quarterbacks in the game when healthy, and we do think that he'll power Dallas back to being, a definite playoff team. And I think clearly the class of the NFC East, if Prescott is healthy. Washington, I think you can expect their defense to regress towards the mean a little bit after last year's huge improvement, but you can also expect their offense to be better because their offense was so horrifically bad last year with Haskins and Smith, and Fitzpatrick is, even if he's average, a huge improvement. So I think Washington's going to be in the playoff hunt as well. The Giants are just heavily dependent on Daniel Jones taking a huge third-year leap forward, and third-year leap forwards don't happen that often. Again, we're going to point to Josh Allen all the time and be like, well, Josh Allen did it. Can't enter quarterback's name here, do it, but it's not likely. And the Eagles also look like a little bit of a wreck. They're in a transition period. Obviously, they're depending on Jalen Hurts taking a huge step forward. So I think it's really going to be Dallas and Washington competing for the division title.
Fair enough. And I want to follow up on one of the QBs you just mentioned, because I have a strong opinion on him. As a guy who does shows in Philadelphia and New York, I watch the Giants every week, if not live, on tape afterwards. I'm sorry, I just don't like Daniel Jones. I like the fact that they added Kenny Golladay. I like the fact that they added Kyle Rudolph. I love the fact that they're getting Saquon Barkley back, because I think he's as talented a back as there is in the National Football League. I just don't like Daniel Jones. No matter what weapons they put around him, I don't think the guy's going to be able to get the job done. And if he's got to run, I think he'll trip over the 10-yard line again and go down. So I'm not a fan. What do your numbers say about Daniel Jones and his potential to improve with better weapons around him this year?
I mean, he's been bad. He was 32nd in the league in our DVOA stat last year. He was 30th the year before. That's not good. I feel like Daniel Jones's ceiling is average. He just doesn't feel like a guy whose ceiling is to be one of the top quarterbacks in the league, even with having Kenny Golladay this year. And when we talk about better weapons, we're talking about one guy. We're talking about Kenny Golladay. I mean, Saquon Barkley is a nice running back to have, and he's a good receiver, but he's not really a receiving weapon per se. He's a guy you dump off to and get more yards than when you dump off to a bad running back. But he's not a guy, you don't build your offense around passes to Saquon Barkley. Kenny Golladay is obviously a really good deep, and Jones has a good deep ball. His problem is more on the short and intermediate stuff. So with Darius Slayton and Kenny Golladay, they can go deep. It's the short and intermediate stuff where Jones has issues.
I want to keep it New York, Aaron, but I want to talk about a player heading out of New York, and that's Sam Darnold, because I think he's going to be one of the more interesting stories in the NFL, getting a second chance in Carolina, getting away from Adam Gase, who I think could have ruined anyone, to be honest, as a head coach in this league. So a lot of people look at what happened to Ryan Tannehill, leaving Miami, going to Tennessee, at least becoming certainly a competent quarterback. Can the same thing happen to Sam Darnold in Carolina?
Can it? Yes. Is it likely to? No. I mean, there's no statistics that can tell you that Sam Darnold is going to be good this year. Because even Ryan Tannehill, when he was struggling in Miami, and I put struggling in sort of scare quotes, was much better than what Darnold has been the last 3 years. He has been the worst quarterback in the league for the last 3 years, other than, I guess, Dwayne Haskins. And there's no there's no statistical way to measure the soul-sucking ability of Adam Gase.
Oh.
It's a purely subjective thing. Yes. Is it possible that Joe,
I want you to come up with a stat, because I think it's real. I think the soul-sucking ability of Adam Gase is real. I need a stat for it.
It's possible that Joe Brady is such a good offensive coordinator. We saw what he did with Joe Burrow at LSU. Teddy Bridgewater had the best full season of his career last year. It's possible that Joe Brady is such a good offensive coordinator that he can even make Sam Darnold look good, but it's very, very unlikely. Is it likely that he'll be better than he was with the Jets? Oh, yeah. Especially because, the receivers are a lot better than what he had certainly last year with the Jets, with DJ Moore and having Robbie Anderson back, who he already had with the Jets, but he didn't have last year. But there's no stat that can tell you that Sam Darnold's going to suddenly turn it around. It's all based on hope and faith.
All right, this is probably a completely unfair question, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway, because you brought it on yourself with your great turn of phrase of soul-sucking ability of the Jets' former head coach. Give me a phrase to describe John Gruden, who's had a different type of coaching career. Didn't get it done. Went to Tampa, won a Super Bowl, got put on a pedestal, got out, did a nice job broadcasting for a decade and then came back to the National Football League. The great return of the great Gruden, and it's been as middle of the roadish as it has been so far in Oakland/Vegas. How would you describe John Gruden coming into the your expectations, what he's accomplished? If you got a really catchy phrase like soul sucking, I would certainly take it for a Grudog. But how do you describe where John Gruden and the Raiders are at right now?
The Las Vegas Raiders replacing silver and black with beige and off-white.
Ooh, not good.
They are the most well, it's better than being the Jets. I mean,
that's true.
They're the most mediocre.
Just stick that knife in, Aaron. Go ahead. A little deeper with that knife.
The Raiders are the most mediocre average team in the league. They have like our most average projection, which means, based on the range of possibilities, could they be good? Sure. Could they be bad? Yeah. Are they most likely to be like 8-9 or 9-8? Yep. They're a little bit above average on offense. They're a little bit below average on defense. Like, it's the fourth year of the Gruden and Mayock, like, let's see some results, guys, but it just doesn't feel like any results are coming. And some of it is because they draft really weird. They have a completely different draft board than everyone else. They really tend to overestimate guys' draft positions. And it's not, look, you want to draft guys when they come up on your board, but you also have to understand everybody else's board and where you can get value by trading down and getting the same guy you would have taken earlier. And the Raiders have a habit of taking guys way before anybody else is thinking of taking them. And then, like Cleveland Farrell, the defensive end they took 4th overall a couple of years ago, they turn into very average players. It's nice that Cleveland Farrell is an average player. You don't use your 4th overall pick on average players.
Speaking of fun descriptions, Aaron, there's one out in Green Bay with a complicated fella and Aaron Rodgers. He might be there. He'll probably be there, but he might not be there. What is the difference in the Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers versus the Green Bay Packers without Aaron Rodgers?
Oh, it's a colossal difference. I mean, there's no question about it. With Jordan Love, we would probably project them to be among the worst offenses in the league. And that's no disrespect meant to Devontae Adams or David Bakhtiari or the other quality players on their offense. It's just that we didn't have a very good projection for Jordan Love coming out of college. There's no NFL, history on him. So we would not project the Packers offense to be very good. And their defense is average. It could be good. It could be bad. There's some obviously good players on it like Jair Alexander and Zadarius Smith, but a huge amount of Green Bay being an actual contender this year depends on Rodgers. I will also add the entire NFC North has difficult schedules, which puts the Packers a little bit behind teams like Tampa Bay and Dallas as far as like trying to get that first round bye because their schedule is pretty difficult. So they need to have Rodgers. The season's over if they don't have Rodgers, honestly.
All right. I'm glad you went there with the Raiders in the draft. Rightfully so. They are just a little weird and do it differently than everybody else. Since you get into that game, I'm going to ask you to do so again for this upcoming season. Patrick Mahomes came into the league, sat for a year. First, we got to look at him. We said, wow, this guy's a little different than everybody. He does a little different than everybody else. Jamal Adams, a pass rushing safety, a guy who can get to the quarterback and do things and put up numbers that we're not used to seeing. Jefferson last year on Minnesota, off the charts. Oh, by the way, John and I both, a lot of ego. How the Eagles didn't draft him and took Jalen Reagor, we're still trying to figure out, but that's an argument for another time. Is there a guy who's coming into the NFL this year out of the draft who may just have a skill set, something that they do that is going to grasp our attention and say, wow, didn't know you could accomplish that from that position? If there is someone like that, who is it most likely to be?
You have honestly hit an area that is not an area of my expertise. I do not pay that much attention. We do college football in the book. I have writers who do college football. I don't pay that much attention to college football until we get to February and we start really evaluating these guys for the draft. So I actually don't have an answer
I
to
thought
that
you
question.
did when you said the Raiders had the funky
No.
draft. I
Yes,
said, all right, he
they
knows
do.
draft. I can ask him about rookies.
Ask me next March.
All right, Aaron, last one for me. Going to keep it in your wheelhouse, and everybody go to footballoutsiders.com. Pick up the Football Outsiders Annual best preview guide in the business. It's not even a guide; it's a book, over 500 pages. You mentioned Tampa Bay, you mentioned Dallas, you mentioned Kansas City. Some people you think are contenders. Give me one surprise team that's going to be a little bit better than people think in the NFC and the AFC.
In the NFC, I'd go with the Minnesota Vikings, who had a bit of a rebuilding year last year that was sort of hidden as maybe being in playoff contention, but it was really a rebuilding year for their salary cap. They're likely to have much better luck this year in things like special teams and injuries, and we think that they're going to be pretty competitive. In the AFC, it's the New England Patriots. Last year, the Patriots lost more defensive talent from year to year than any team we've tracked in the last 18 years. This year, the Patriots are adding more defensive talent than any team that we've tracked in the last 18 years. And we think their defense is going to bounce back to being one of the league's best with all the talent that they're adding. Their offense should be a little bit better than it was last year. I have no idea what the deal is with Cam Newton's health. I don't know if Mac Jones is going to be the quarterback, but defense and an easy schedule, the easiest projected schedule in the league, will carry the Patriots to a playoff berth.
All right. No, this is a question that I'm completely swimming upstream and probably won't get the answer that I'm looking for, but I'm hoping for the answer. Have you, in doing what you guys do, and you give us one more peek at the 500-page almanac that you're going to be sending out soon enough? Damn, love that thing. Anybody within the league, everyone who's in the league thinks they're smarter than everybody else, and they can't acknowledge media members for doing a good job and unearthing great information and the like. But there are some people that are honest and genuine. Did you either hear from, see a quote, get a text, get a tweet from someone who said, great point, brought out by the Football Outsiders? I hadn't realized. Have you ever gotten an acknowledgement from someone within the league that you said, damn, that's why we do what we do?
Oh, tons. Yeah, absolutely. We have, first of all, every team in the league now has at least one analytics person. And I think the most analytically forward teams are the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. We hear from teams in the league all the time. They follow what we do. They follow our competitors. They use the next-gen stats. They use all of the charting that comes from the league, from the chips and the pads that chart where the players move on the field. So analytics has taken a huge step forward in the NFL over the last 4 to 5 years. And there's no question that what we do is being followed by people in the league.
That's what we like to hear. Glad to hear they're acknowledging it, because I know some people in sports that just refuse to. If they didn't come up with the idea themselves, then it doesn't really count and it doesn't really exist. Glad you're getting the props for what you guys do. We give you props for hopping on with us today. Aaron, thanks much. We'll talk to you when the season gets rolling.
All right. Thanks for having me on, guys. Again, footballoutsiders.com to get the electronic version of the almanac, or Amazon for the print version.
The only issue we got with you, Aaron, is the fact that you've only got half a wall. You got a actual window on one side. We got to get a full-blown wall behind you so you can look like the Mac Birds 365 guys. Aaron, great stuff. Appreciate you coming on board.
Thanks for having me on the show, guys.
Thanks,
Aaron Schatz of Football Outsiders here with us on Birds 365. Pretty good wall. Not as good as Sean and I, but a pretty good wall in his own right, and he gave us some great info. All right, we'll come back. I say we put a bow on the show next here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.